On the 17th of April, 2018, a routine flight from New York to Texas experienced something that no passenger or crew member on board could have ever imagined or wished for in their darkest nightmares. An engine explosion and a passenger half flung from the window at 32,000 feet in the air was surely not what any of them expected, and everything that happened after was truly horrifying. This is the story of the unfortunate Southwest Airlines Flight 1380 on the 17th of April, 2018. A day that shook the aviation world and changed the lives of all who were on board. But what caused this incident, and how has it reshaped the way we think about flying today? And most importantly, what decisions the pilot took to save the 149 lives? This is the incredible story of Southwest Airlines Flight 1380. The aircraft operating Southwest Airlines Flight 1380 was a Boeing 737-700, identified by its tail number N772SW. Delivered in the year 2000, the plane was 18 years old at the time of the incident. It was powered by two CFM 56-7B engines manufactured by CFM International. These are turbofan engines, which means that most of the air accelerated by the fan bypasses the core of the engine. It was scheduled for a routine flight, a journey that tragically would soon take a terrifying turn for the 149 people on board. 5 of the 149 persons on the flight were crew members. Tammy Jo Schultz, a former United States Navy fighter pilot, served as the flight's captain, with Darren Lee Ellisor, a former United States Air Force pilot, as the first officer. The cabin crew consisted of 3 flight attendants: Rachel Fernheimer, Shaunique Mallory, and Catherine Sandoval. Another Southwest Airlines employee, Cheryl Cantrell, was aboard this flight as a passenger who also assisted the passengers when the explosion happened. For each one of these people, this was simply going to be a 3-hour routine flight from LaGuardia Airport in New York City to Dallas Love Field in Texas. The weather was fine and all the pre-flight checkups showed no issues. The pilots and all passengers boarded the flight without any issues, and at first, everything seemed quite normal. The flight departed around 10:43 a.m., but soon everything was going to change. 20 minutes into the flight, a sharp noise made everyone on the plane's hearts race. The left engine of the aircraft suffered a catastrophic failure, which resulted in a loud explosion. Passengers near the affected engine described hearing a deafening bang, followed by violent vibrations that shook the cabin. But this wasn't the first sign of trouble. 20 months ago, a similar incident happened to Southwest Airlines Flight 3472, flying the same aircraft type with the same engine type. The engine manufacturer, CFM, issued a service directive following the previous accident, requiring ultrasonic examinations of the turbine fan blades with specific serial numbers, service cycles, or service times. Because the engine implicated in this incident did not meet the directive's requirements, Southwest did not conduct the check. And that's how the issue in the engine blades of Flight 1380 went unnoticed. This single negligence resulted in a crisis that became a life or death situation for 149 individuals. The catastrophic failure of the left engine on Southwest Airlines Flight 1380 set off a chain reaction of critical events, each with significant consequences. The engine failure itself, caused by a fractured fan blade within the CFM 56-7B engine, resulted in the release of high-speed shrapnel. These pieces punctured the engine casing and tore into the fuselage of the aircraft. The containment structure, designed to prevent debris from penetrating the plane's body, was unable to fully contain the fragments, and this is where things actually started to get very serious. The debris shattered the passenger window. The immediate impact of this failure was a rapid loss of cabin pressure, which forced the deployment of oxygen masks and placed the passengers and crew in a dangerous situation at 32,000 feet. The broken window caused another threat to the passengers. The cabin pressure started to drop rapidly, and when a cabin is depressurized at high altitude, the difference between the external and internal pressure causes air and anything not securely fastened to be violently sucked out. And that's exactly what happened. Jennifer Reardon, seated near the broken window, was partially sucked out of the plane. A passenger reported that 2 gentlemen pulled her back in the plane, and a few other passengers tried to somehow cover that hole. Amidst all this chaos, someone also tried to give her CPR. The situation simply kept getting worse, and the combination of the engine failure, the depressurization, and the resulting injuries marked the moment when what began as a routine flight turned into a life-threatening emergency. In the cockpit, The pilots were immediately alerted to a loss of engine power and received warnings from the aircraft's systems, but the passengers and crew members of Flight 1380 were yet to face more problems. The pilots faced significant operational challenges in the cockpit. With one engine down, the aircraft lost half its thrust, creating an imbalance that made the plane difficult to control. The airplane yawed toward the side of the failing engine due to the asymmetric thrust, requiring continuous modifications to keep it stable. The problem was made worse by the fact that the engine debris had harmed vital sections, such as the fuselage and wing, which had an impact on the aerodynamics and an increase in drag dot. The pilots had to focus on safely descending to a lower altitude to equalize pressure, while also planning for an emergency landing. Things were not looking for this flight. The cabin crew also had to deal with a lot during this difficult situation. Their primary responsibility was to ensure passenger safety, specifically taking care of the one who got partially sucked out of the flight and the one who got injured while trying to save her. They also had to make sure that everyone had their oxygen masks and prepare for an emergency landing. However, the overwhelming fear among passengers made it quite difficult for them to manage things. Some passengers were screaming, others were crying, and many were in shock, making it difficult for crew members to complete emergency protocols. These building problems, mechanical, operational, and emotional, created an incredibly high-pressure environment for everyone on board. As the situation aboard Flight 1380 spiraled into chaos, the flight crew launched into a desperate struggle to regain control of the aircraft. In this chaos, Captain Tammy Jo Schultz managed to contact the air traffic control station and inform them about the situation. With one engine completely incapacitated and the aircraft losing altitude due to depressurization, they initiated an emergency descent to bring the plane to a breathable altitude and find a place for emergency landing. Throughout the descent, the asymmetric thrust caused by the failed engine made controlling the aircraft a significant challenge. Captain Schultz and First Officer Ellisor used their extensive aviation experience to steady the plane. Their first priority was to get vectors for a new emergency landing. A flurry of radio communications between the pilots and multiple air traffic control ATC stations was taking place, and after declaring an emergency, the crew was initially told to land at Harrisburg International Airport, which was closest to them. At that time, the flight was 28,000 feet in the air, which made it difficult for it to land at an airport that was this close. The first officer immediately started studying maps to find their other options and found out that Philadelphia Airport was the safest option. So, as the flight progressed, control was handed off to Philadelphia Approach, the nearest airport equipped to handle an emergency landing. Each air traffic control station worked to clear other aircraft from the flight path, coordinate emergency services on the ground, and offer navigational assistance to ensure the safest possible outcome for Flight 1380. The coordination between the cockpit and air traffic control was critical, as every second counted in ensuring the safety of the passengers and crew. By this time, the passengers were made aware of the emergency landing. Even though they all were in a state of panic, yet they remained remarkably cooperative. When Jennifer Reardon was brought back into the plane, she had to lie down across the seats, forcing several passengers to vacate their spots. These passengers were asked to move to the jump seats, typically reserved for crew members during landing. Now, there was no space for the cabin crew to sit. In this difficult situation, passengers acted as human seatbelts, holding onto the crew members to ensure stability during the emergency landing. After finding the airport for emergency landing flight 1380 descended rapidly towards safety. The captain contacted a control tower in Philadelphia. Till this time, the first officer was flying the control tower, but for this emergency landing, Captain Tammy Jo Schultz took control of the aircraft. She descended the plane towards 11,000 feet, and during this Philadelphia airport, cleared this flight for the emergency landing. Now, with the provided new vectors, it was all about precise coordination. A single mistake could cost so many lives. The pilots had to ensure the damaged aircraft remained stable during the approach while communicating with Philadelphia Air Traffic Control to arrange a priority landing. As the plane's altitude decreased, the pilots fought against the asymmetric thrust and drag caused by the damaged engine and fuselage, but the captain managed to take the 10,000 feet below, decreasing the risk of hypoxia. Despite every challenge they faced, Captain Schultz remained calm, guiding the plane toward the runway with remarkable composure. The approach was steep and tense, as every adjustment carried the weight of 149 lives. After this, the plane was cleared for further descent to 4,000 feet. The first officer suggested going through all the necessary checklists. The captain told the control tower that they would need a little time before landing, as they had to go through all the checklists. However, there was one thing that the captain was not aware of till now: the broken window and the condition of the passenger who got sucked out. When the cabin crew made them aware of the situation, everything that the captain decided initially was about to change. The captain decided to land as immediately as possible. A few things from the checklist were remaining, but the captain decided to use a different flap setting, which was different from what was used in case of engine failure. The first officer was skeptical of the decision, but the flap setting that the captain chose worked in their favor. The new setting gave 737 descent at a speed of around 180 knots. This vital decision saved the lives of individuals who were on board. Now finally, the moment came which had everyone in the chokehold. The pilots took a visual approach instead of an instrument landing system, and Flight 1380 finally approached Philadelphia International Airport. There was a noticeable sense of tension and optimism in the air at the airport. To guarantee a safe landing, the damaged aircraft, which was powered by a single engine, needed to be handled carefully. First Officer Darren Ellisor and Captain Tammy Jo Schultz skillfully managed the Boeing 737-700 through turbulence, drag, and asymmetric thrust during its final landing. Despite the gravity of the situation, things went smoothly, and the captain managed a safe landing for Flight 1380. After the landing flight, attendants immediately began coordinating the safe evacuation of passengers, ensuring that everyone got off safely. Paramedics attended to the injured, including those who had tried to save Jennifer Reardon, the passenger who tragically lost her life. Overall, 7 passengers had injuries, but the rest were totally fine. While the rescue operation marked the end of the immediate crisis, the emotional and physical toll on passengers and crew would linger long after. For the survivors of Flight 1380, the moments after landing brought an overwhelming mix of relief, grief, and gratitude. Jennifer Reardon was the only fatality of the incident. Her death cast a somber shadow over the relief of survival, reminding everyone of the fragility of life at 32,000 feet. She was a well-known leader and altruist from New Mexico, and a mom of 2 children. Everyone mourned her death, and it was a tragic loss for everyone around her. In the days following the emergency landing, the passengers shared their experiences with the world. They praised their captain Tammy Jo Schultz and the flight crew for their timely decisions. The professionalism of the crew and the courage of the passengers was appreciated all over the world. Multiple investigations were started to find out the real cause of the explosion and prevent similar events in the future. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, conducted the investigation and quickly dispatched investigators to Philadelphia International Airport. Initial findings pointed to a severe malfunction of one of the CFM56-7B engines, which are commonly used in commercial aviation. The engine's 13th fan blade had split owing to metal fatigue, causing a chain reaction of destructions that punctured the fuselage and depressurized the cabin. Further analysis revealed that the fractured fan blade showed signs of fatigue cracking that had gone undetected during previous inspections. This raised concerns about the effectiveness of existing maintenance protocols and inspection techniques. The National Transportation Safety Board investigation highlighted the need for more advanced ultrasonic and eddy current testing methods to detect subsurface cracks in engine components. As a result, the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) issued an emergency airworthiness directive, requiring all airlines to conduct immediate inspections of engines using similar fan blade designs. This incident made the aviation industry take immediate measures on safety practices. The uncontained engine failure and subsequent cabin depressurization underscored vulnerabilities in aircraft maintenance and design, driving regulatory bodies and airlines to reevaluate existing protocols. One of the most significant outcomes was the Federal Aviation Administration's Emergency Airworthiness Directive, mandating ultrasonic inspections of fan blades in CFM56-7B engines. This directive extended beyond Southwest Airlines, affecting airlines worldwide operating similar aircraft, ensuring that latent metal fatigue issues were addressed before they could lead to catastrophic failures. Now, pre-flight checkups are taken more seriously than ever to ensure the safety of passengers. This incident was basically a wake-up call for the aviation industry to renew their safety protocols, and they indeed took everything very seriously. The tragic events of Flight 1380 remind us of the fragility of life and the extraordinary strength of the human spirit in moments of crisis. Like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.